Welcome, everybody, back. Today, we are here to dive into the next step after the NFL draft, I guess we can call it. That's undrafted free agent signings. And the Lions, I'm not going to say officially because some of these, I guess, aren't officially official, but we have somewhere around 10 names that have been announced as undrafted free agent signings for the Detroit Lions. And today, I'm going to call this my first look because this is not a full breakdown of each player. I haven't watched enough games of each one of these players to get there. Some players I've watched more than others as well, so I have more of a sense on certain guys here. But I went through, watched all the players that have been so far labeled as UDFA signings for the Lions, not including kind of just the tryout players. And today I just wanted to give a first look on all of these guys. We get to see more of these guys. Maybe there's something else that stands out. Maybe there's something different than what I initially thought I was even looking at. But it's just kind of that first look, first little background on what to maybe expect, what to look for with the players that the Lions have brought in. Now, most of this is just based on me watching. This isn't really statistical based or statistically driven. This is simply just what I've seen of the players. Let's get right into it. There is no specific order here, but shout out to Pride of Detroit, who actually listed all of these players. They have like an updating article. Shout out to them. We're going to use their list for this list. But let's get things started right away with the Indiana tight end, and that is Zach Horton at 6'3", 251 pounds. Now, athletically speaking, none of his testing numbers really pop when you look at it from the 40 time, which was on the 4.96 side. That's not great. The 3-cone drill time, which wasn't great either. But when you watch Zach Horton, he was personally, for me, one of the most exciting players to watch of this entire bunch of players, right? A transfer from James Madison that when you just see the toughness, you think grit when you watch this player as a blocker. You see the sustainability as a blocker. I've went through multiple games of this player, one of the players that I've watched more of, because I just love watching the way that he plays the game as a blocker specifically. And that's quickly what will stand out. It's the sustainability in terms of the control that he has with his footwork, his ability to leverage himself, and his ability to get under pads. If you watch him against Ohio State, he has some fantastic reps against Jack Sawyer and some of their other edge defenders there. He has a really fast entry into contact. He's feisty. He's a finisher that works through the rep. Now, for me, the lower body, just in terms of the base that he actually offers, some of the anchor that could be there in pass protection as well. Both those areas, I do have some concerns maybe as we go forward where, okay, can he recover? Is he just going to get knocked off the spot if he's not into early positioning? But he's definitely a piece that feels like can be successful as a move piece because of the way that he enters into contacts, because of some of the quickness that you actually see in short area. He actually shows more quickness than guys that test out better when you see him working off the ball and getting upfield, when you see him trying to cut off blocks on his zone scheme, when he's working in line. You see some of the movement skills in some of those short area spots. And then you're also going to see the inside hands that he plays with early. Now, to me, at times he could struggle a little bit to find a latch. And then in terms of the receiving side of things, this is where you probably have more knocks than anything. You're just trying to look for more production here because for me, he kind of races through his route breaks a little bit. Some of the discipline can be a little bit questionable as well. As a pass catcher, you'll see kind of routes fade a little bit just from being able to maintain that route integrity. But what you like about him is some of the short area quickness, the way that he gets off the ball, some of the feel. He seems to have some nice instincts when he's working zone coverage. And for me, Zach Horton is a guy that I don't even know what position he would fit into. He kind of looks like a short tight end that kind of looks like a fullback. It's kind of weird to project what this is actually going to work for. How much of a receiving threat can he actually be? Can he add some other dimension once the ball gets in his hands where that could open up something up? But man, the toughness is hard not to buy into. And for the Lions side of things, this is the kind of guy that you would just expect that the Lions would be interested in. So first off, Zach Horton is on our list here, and I'm excited to see more of this player. Let's move on to the next player. Again, no specific order here, and we're going to go right to the running back position because the Lions brought in two backs, and I want to make this clear early. If I say any of the names incorrectly, that's going to happen. That's probably going to happen with almost every player listed here, so just stay with me on that. First off, we're going to go to Robachaw, one of those two, maybe, out of Boston College, a running back rocking the number 5 here. Another guy that I've watched plenty of at 5'11.5", 209 pounds. Again, from a testing perspective, not a ton of things that are going to catch your eye. He definitely looks like a downhill power runner. When you think about the style of him, he's a downhill runner. He's going to get downhill, and that's his game, right? He's going to play pretty fast in that sense. He does show some real explosiveness. So outside of the speed testing and the quickness testing, you do see some explosive testing when you look at some of the numbers there. He moves with urgency. What I really stuck out to me, and again, I need to see more, actually the pass game impact, because I felt like there was a real confidence with the ball in the air. There was a confidence when attacking the football in the air, some of the body control that he would show as well, kind of working towards the ball when it was in the air. And then again, as a runner, he showed some real quickness downhill. He played at a pace that feels like it could translate the way that he would press the line of scrimmage. I didn't feel a ton of elusiveness between the tackles, which was an issue for me. You know, some of the shakes, some of the real creativity, some of the ability to get skinny, you know, those kind of things. His acceleration wasn't fantastic either. easier. He just didn't feel super slippery. He also felt like at times it could be a little tunnel vision where it's like, all right, he may work between the tackles, but how much is he going to be able to create outside of the tackles? How many times are things going to get stuffed up inside where he can then bounce outside and make something happen creatively? I don't really know on that, but so much of what he was utilized for is the gap scheme, for inside zone scheme. Maybe you can get him on some duos as well, and that's where he can get to the spot where he'll kind of settle in behind his offensive lineman, get the hand on the back, kind of ride those guys throughout the play. That's where he stands out to me specifically. It's kind of the game that you're going to get here. He has those running legs through contact, really feels like there's a contact balance, but there's a finishing ability to it as well. I thought he was a little bit upright at times, but this is definitely a powerful back that's fundamentally sound as a ball carrier. He's competent with his hands, not only as a pass catcher, but also in space where he's kind of flipping the ball to the sideline. He seems pretty fundamentally sound. So Kai is a player that, again, it's a really loaded running back room. It feels like these are the kind of players that have to make an impact on special teams. But I also noticed just the urgency in everything that he does, the way that he gets out of the backfield, the quickness of how he scans the line of scrimmage and gets out into a release, the check and release opportunities. You're not going to maybe see a guy that opens up a ton of separation as a route runner, but there's just an urgency to his game, which to me adds intrigue. So personally, I'm intrigued to see what this turns into. Special teams, of course, is going to have to be the calling card early, it feels. Go to another running back, this one out of the University of Ohio, and this is going to be Anthony Titus, the Ohio Bobcats, not Ohio State, the Ohio Bobcats. 5'11.5", 226 pounds, another downhill runner, transfer from Northwestern. And I get a little bit of a different vibe when I watch this piece. He was also used a lot as a lead blocker as well, kind of got out for some of the quarterback runs, got to lead the way a little bit. Which, by the way, being a lead blocker could mean a lot on special teams, either the other back or the fullback, which are the two up backs, basically, when you're talking about kick return opportunities, the two guys that line in front. Those are beneficial for a lead blocking. Specifically, I get a little bit of a different sense when I watch this ball carrier in terms of what is his game, because I do feel like I see maybe a little bit better in terms of some pacing when you watch him as a runner specifically. I think there's a little bit of a better flow to his game when you watch him kind of working the zone schemes. I feel like he's got really fast eyes as he gets to football. You see the vision, really fast eyes to kind of redirect. And when you see some of the movement skills, there's some quickness to get downhill specifically. There's some acceleration, which feels more average. Like you get him out in space, he doesn't feel that dynamic, but he can get downhill because, again, I think he plays with a pretty nice play speed. There's not going to be much sideline to sideline range. It feels like here the ability to bounce, play very wide consistently. There's not really a second gear to his game that felt like a home run threat when you watched him either. But then in the pass game, you saw the pass pro. He kind of just attacked guys in pass pro. You got some of that feistiness there. He has a little bit more of an ability to actually get skinny, right? A little bit more ability to get skinny and kind of find little spaces and creases when you think about being more of a zone runner, being more consistent with the pace. My big problem here was his leg drive in terms of the balance. Felt like he got tripped up a lot as a runner, which was a problem as well, but he was utilized short yardage. He's really strong in the upper body, which is super noticeable very quickly. A little bit too wide just for finding those kind of slither entry points, but ultimately he does a nice job of pretty much staying square to the line of scrimmage. So you may have some more upside here in terms of maybe scheme flexibility, it feels like, with this piece, but ultimately he kind of fits into the same idea of get him downhill, right? Because he's not going to play super skinny, but you want to get him downhill. He's kind of a tough nose runner specifically. So that's Anthony Titus the third out of Ohio. All right, let's keep it moving. Next up, we're going to go to a defensive end, which is very exciting to watch, especially when you consider his build. And this is going to be Keith Cooper Jr. out of Houston, man. This is a big man that had a lot of success when you actually watched him, especially when you think about some of the late wins that he was able to kind of tap into this past season, working as a defensive end, work both sides of the line of scrimmage, both as your right end and left defensive end, 6'4.5", 280 pounds, transfer from Tulane. You see the heaviness at the top of the rush. You'll see the length, which actually wasn't officially measured, but you see the length when you watch him at the top of the rush, the long arm entry that he can create and actually find some success off of. And I want to quickly point out this game against Jonah Savainia, who was playing left tackle in this game for Arizona, and he had a lot of success. There was an inside win that I didn't show at the top of the rush. He showed his real power against Jonah, who's a big offensive tackle, probably going to guard at the next level. I think he sometimes plays too wide. The way that he actually positions himself in entry doesn't feel like it opens up as many opportunities as it should. As a pass rusher and as a run blocker, like setting down and setting an edge, because a lot of times he was playing right off the hip of an offensive tackle. He's saying 5 technique, maybe a 4, maybe a 4-eye. It's kind of working in that big DN role. control. The problem was there, he didn't hold his ground incredibly well from the games that I went through in terms of dealing with double teams at the point of attack. But man, he was powerful at the top of his rush. You saw the power in his ankles. You saw a little bit of craftiness too. There was like an ability to kind of find an entry point, show a little bit of shake. I don't know what his testing would be here, but I did get the sense that he had more agility than you would expect for a guy at his size. And it showed up from some of the looseness in his games. I felt there was a redirect looseness. I felt there was a looseness in his hips to kind of create opening angles. And that was really the standout thing for me when you think about his build, because upfield, he's not like the most dynamic athlete. He's not overly twitchy, but he does play with timing off the ball that you can buy into. His stride depth is adequate as well. Like those two things tied together can lead to some consistency. He's just not that consistent, that twitchy off the ball, but he'll squeeze the line of scrimmage. He'll play with some discipline. He gets low off the ball, plays with low pads, which can really improve some of the play strength. And then when you think about his finishing ability with his length, he's really rangy as a finisher, but the problem can be some of this, that movement skills in space can, it can get him into trouble, especially you think about the next level. But he's powerful in his hips, right? He really rolls his hips through his punches, and you'll see that power. I just didn't think that his edge set ability through his lower body was where you would expect it, but there is some upper body pop truly to his game. Overall, this feels like a very easy fit for the Lions here, right? Kind of that big defensive end role. You think about the Josh Pascals of this defense, where you think about what we did have in John Kaminsky. Keith Cooper feels like he'll fall right into that mix as well. And he did. He played kind of that, big D end role, but he would kick out. He'd stand up sometimes. So he showed some of that flexibility as well. And then flipping both sides in the line of scrimmage kind of plays into that as well here. He didn't really have much of a change of pace. He felt like a very kind of a one-pace rusher that may not have the most versatility of actually ways to win as a rusher due to some of the kind of one-pace nature to his pass rushing. But his hand usage was ready. He was ready to fight guys off at the top of the rush. He had some of the body control at the top of the rush to redirect. You saw the hand swipes. You see him kind of rip and get underneath the blocks. You saw his ability to kind of find an edge and work through the plays. So ultimately, this was one of the most exciting players in terms of me buying into. There could be a chance that this guy sticks around. At worst case, maybe he sticks around in like the practice squad. But this is a player that I would like to see, especially with the measurables. I would like to see what this turns into and how much you can actually tap into here with Keith Cooper Jr. That being said, let's go to another guy that really hasn't played a lot. I mean, this one kind of shakes it up a little bit, but that's going to be Gavin Holmes from Texas, the cornerback transfer. And remember, Texas was loaded at defensive back, so it's very understandable that he didn't see the field a lot as well. For 5'11", 185 pounds, Gavin Holmes, when you watch him and you see the movement skills, it's just the weird part of not seeing him on the field consistently, right? He's a transfer out of Wake Forest, but we didn't see him on the field consistently. You see him work a lot of half turn. You see him work a lot of off coverage opportunities. But the more that you watch him, I think the more you buy into, like, this could be effective as a press corner. He was kind of used as a dime cornerback for this defense that would play inside and outside. And I thought he showed some success, showed some early recognition, some of the lateral quickness to kind of step on top of routes. I didn't always feel like I felt the long speed there. That felt like it would get him into trouble a little bit. Some of the closing speed, some of the closing burst specifically felt like it was going to get him in trouble a little bit. But the transition quickness was relatively noticeable. He's very proactive. Seems like he could maybe declare his hips a little bit early, but he's pretty proactive in the spots that he get himself to. Very balanced with his footwork as well, which will lead to a much faster transition ability as a press cornerback as well. And he's pretty long off the ball too. I mean, there was examples where you just cut guys off. Now, as a tackler in space, I do wonder about that a little bit, right? But there's some short area foot quickness. I think it shows up in off-man coverage. He's pretty patient, but he kind of just rolls over top of routes. I would like to see some of maybe the process speed up, right? When he's working, ball and man. Like there was a lot of times, you put him into cover three, he's playing a quarters look, and you just felt like he was late to kind of be reactive. Like he kept an eye balance, but he wouldn't react to things. He was kind of just floating until the ball came out. Then he would react to it. Then he would squeeze the route. But you felt the movement skills. You felt the real ability to sink at the top of those route breaks specifically. And that's kind of what I bought into, was truly just the movement skills, the fluidity within his game, the patience within his game, the way that he would play leverage and kind of sink over top of routes when working in those half-turn opportunities. He was just a little bit sluggish at times for me to get going, right? And you saw some of the instincts too. Like he would get caught in trail and he'd settle in underneath routes. Like, that's pretty fun. And it's always going to come back to special teams with these guys. But the biggest question that I'm going to ask myself, especially when I watch more, is position flexibility, his build, his movement speed, questioning some of the long speed. How many different spots can he play? Can he be better in the nickel? Is that a better spot for him, right? Could he go to safety? Let's move on to the next player, because again, we got a lot here. Let's go on to a player that was actually I would say more well known during the draft process when he went undrafted. And this is going to be the tight end, Kaden Prior. I honestly, this is like the worst name in the entire draft for me to try to pronounce. I have no idea what we're going for here. Prior. I think that's right. I don't know. But this is the tight end out of Ole Miss that listed in at 246. Probably needs to put on a little bit more muscle mass. You just kind of feel that when you watch him, but he definitely has the height that you're looking for. 6 foot, nearly 6'6", 6'5.5" essentially here. Pretty long arms as well. The testing isn't horrible. 4.78 40, 7.193 cone drill. It's not bad. And I think the thing that pops here is his success as a lead blocker, man. They use him a lot as a move blocker. They use him a lot of split zone opportunities. They use him to kind of lead the way a little bit. And I think that's the thing that you're intrigued by here. He doesn't feel overwhelmingly powerful. You feel like, all right, we may have to build onto this. He's going to have to be more powerful. He's going to have to be more of an assertive piece when he's working in line like he did, because he has the build for it, but he needs to be more assertive here. But I remember there was questions about Laporta when we added him too as a blocker, and he's become a fantastic run blocker for the Lions. But you'll see some of the little things that he does well, right? His ability to keep his pads down when he kind of creates drive opportunities, his ability to kind of get underneath blocks on entry as well. He kind of has the hips, the positioning for it. You'll see this guy's kind of a move blocker. To me, he shows a lot of bend within his game as well, which opens up a lot of sustainability specifically as a blocker. And then he can kind of latch guys on the move, right? You put him as a puller, kind of latch guys. Now, I thought sometimes he give up some rough angles, but he also didn't show maybe the strength to kind of sustain through some of those blocks, so he would just kind of lose it eventually anyway. But he was pretty adaptive as a move blocker, so he has the build of an inline piece that probably needs to put on some more muscle mass, but was successful as a move blocker. As a route runner, again, this is an area where you don't feel much juice once the ball gets in his hands, but he doesn't drop a lot of passes. He's pretty reliable as a pass catcher. He's very soft with his hands. They're reliable. The technique feels consistent, and he's a nice little zone target that works himself into a very wide frame when you work him underneath, right? You feel like very big target that you can kind of just find. He just doesn't play with a lot of speed through his cuts, right? I don't think there's a lot of juice there, which opens up a ton of like creativity in terms of ways that he's going to be able to actually beat man coverage. But then as back as a blocker, right, you need more hip power, you need more drive to his game, right? Sometimes I thought he was a little bit late to react as well as a blocker. But ultimately, right, there was some sustained footwork. This feels like a zone beater, but you're just wondering, can we get him a little more powerful? Does he have the mentality to block? And I felt that he did through the games that I went through. We'll have to see how that translates. And then can we open up more as a route runner? Like how many ways can he actually win outside of just beating zone coverage? But that felt pretty fluid. So I like this because Kenny Yeboah, I thought, was a people mover as a run blocker, but really he didn't have any production as a pass catcher. This feels like a piece that's pretty comfy on the move as well. So can you get a little bit more potentially as a pass catcher? Here is the question for me. But that's Kaden, the transfer out of Memphis. All right, let's keep it moving, man. We got a few to get through here. Let's go to the offensive line now, because the Lions brought in some offensive linemen that are maybe the most interesting pieces the Lions brought in. Of course, when you think about backup center, that becomes immediately interesting because the Lions may need this, maybe. But adding two guards helps. Graham Glasgow as the backup center. But this is going to be Leaf Falanu. I think that's how you say his name, based on Troy Fautanu coming out a couple years ago. Leaf Falanu out of Arizona State, transfer from UNLV, listed at just under 300 pounds, shorter side, 6'1", and testing is okay, not overly impressive, not overly explosive, it doesn't feel like, but he settled into that center role from the games that I went through, and I was pretty impressed with some of the short area quickness that he created, some of the juice that he had in some of the short spaces, the movement, the reactiveness there. It surprised me a little bit for this guy, and he's built like very bottom heavy, right? The top feels a little bit less broad, feels more skinny in the upper body, which kind of stinks, but he's pretty thick, well built through the lower body. And when you watch some of the movement skills, some of the short area movement, you get kind of excited, especially for a zone piece specifically here. And if you watch him against Texas, one of the last games that I went through, I was pretty intrigued. Like I was like, he actually had a pretty strong game against Texas throughout. He handled zero techniques well, which some centers can be kind of slow to recognize and work through that. He handled that well specifically. He never really felt dominant to me, but I felt the more that I watched him, the more consistent that I felt that I was seeing there, more consistency throughout his entire game, because there is some juice off the ball, because laterally A to A gap, he can actually move with some good reactiveness as well, right? He can get some inside entry. There's some twitch when working as a zone blocker specifically, and he's got that real stocky lower body, which you want to buy into as either a run blocker, which it feels like when he gets guys square, he can create movement. Outside of that, you really question some of the upper body strength. Sometimes he'll land punches, and it just feels like guys run right through it. It doesn't impact anybody. The core strength feels very questionable. Resetting blocks, right? Staying controlled and staying the ability to sustain blocks also feels a little bit questionable as well. When he gets good entry and he gets his legs behind it, it feels like he can create a little bit of a downhill drive. Maybe you want to tap into more of that, but it feels like he can a little bit as well. But those seal blocks kind of got ran through. When you talk about some of the body control, both these offensive linemen had this issue. He was on the ground a little bit too much for me. His depth as a pass protector felt shaky, like stunts, pickups, those kind of things. Just being too aggressive, too out in front of himself. I thought he played onto his toes a little bit too much, kind of played over himself out in space a little bit too much, which led to some inconsistency when you had him working on the move. And then you get to some of these other aspects of his game as well. And he's got some build-up speed. You feel it kind of when he's working some of the wide zone specifically, but then you also don't feel a lot of instincts. Like I didn't feel a lot of instincts when things got out to the second level or a play broke down. Like he was just kind of felt like he was lost a little bit. And it was like, I don't really know where to go. When he got up to the second level, it didn't feel like he had any kind of consistency in his posture. It was like, all right, he's there, but the way that he's taking on blocks, like he's just absorbing contact. This is the problem. And he doesn't have the posture to hold his ground. He's just getting knocked off balance. He's coming in sideways. Like things like that become an issue. And he doesn't have like your typical offensive line build that you look for with a really broad frame, broad shoulders, that kind of thing there. Now he's got some straining to his game, which helps him a little bit kind of hold the seal of blocks. He does have some redirect footwork, but again, if he gives up an edge, I don't know how much he's actually going to be able to recover there. And he just needs to play a little bit wider. I thought he just played a little bit skinny. So overall, like a guy that can keep his hands centered like this as a center, the more I watched, the more I was excited. He's a transfer from UNLV. A lot of these guys are transfers that I do just need to watch more of. I want to see more of the road grading toughness aspect to his game, but I'm sure he has it if the Lions signed him. So that moves us to the other offensive lineman, and this one comes from North Dakota State, which is one of the most, I think he was maybe my favorite player to watch. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pumped to do a breakdown. I'm sure we're going to do it at one point because this is Mason Miller, the right tackle from North Dakota State, 6'6", 296 pounds, with almost 34-inch arms, super long, really good build. You look at the frame, the way that he's filled out. I like a lot of that, right? Maybe you could even tap in a little bit more there, but I really like the way this guy's built. You think about guard flexibility. Does feel like there's some enough quickness, maybe adequate quickness off the ball where you could potentially look at trying to kick him inside, right, by the speed and the consistent timing off the ball specifically. Some of the patience that he plays with, the pad level that he consistently plays with, the wide base and the wide frame and the shoulder width base that he constantly plays with as well. And to me, you see some of the cutoff speed, which feels questionable, and working the linebackers, which feels questionable. It almost makes you think that maybe he does kick inside. Maybe that is the best spot, but I think that he could stay at tackle from what I've seen. You may have to give him some support because he's very patient, and I think at times it'll give up a softer edge than maybe you're looking for specifically. Doesn't really, cross his feet. He's pretty balanced as a mover as well. And then you get to some of the power, and he carries it because he has a nice pad level on his drive blocks. Again, that wide base, he keeps his frame really square and pass pro. You see his patience that he's working for. He doesn't overset very often either. His lower body can be a little thin, which kind of stinks a little bit, right? Kind of speaks to his build a little bit there as well. And then from a body control aspect, I just felt like he stalled too much. It stalled a little bit through contact. It stalled at the top of the rush. He stays square to the line of scrimmage, which I liked as well. And he's got some strong latching hands, which works for a tackle as well. Ready hands. He kind of used the drag hand pretty well. He gives support. He kind of stepped down, knocked guys off their track a little bit as well. He was fast to fire in guys' chest. He had some nastiness that popped to his game. He was a real finisher to his game as well. Just some positioning, which I felt was messy, and that would seem a zone blocker, right? He's a nice little hedge blocker, gets up to the next level pretty well. There's some smoothness to it. There's some looseness when he goes up and seals guys at the next level. Overall, I think Mason Miller is going to be a guy to keep an eye on as we go forward, figuring out what position, but also just seeing like, okay, what can we turn this into, right? How athletic is this guy? How much can we ask? How much can we put on his plate? And flexibility means it all. And this guy actually feels like he could have some real flexibility up and down the line. A receiver, because we brought in two receivers, and both these receivers are very talented from what I've seen. We'll start with Jackson Meeks out of Syracuse, who is almost 6'2", 213 pounds this past season. Super successful from a statistical perspective, over 1,000 yards receiving, only a 6% drop rate. 60% of his contested passes were caught. He tested really well. The 6-7 4-3 cone drill. The 40 time wasn't great, but the 6-7 cone 3-cone drill is actually what catches my eyes a lot more than anything. But he plays with a long striding ability, especially off the release, which kind of minimizes some of my concerns as a vertical threat a little bit as well. And you'll see it, like he's got some looseness to his game. He's got an ability to kind of dip, work around traffic a little bit. He's got some bend. He can kind of weave his routes, can kind of work some of those speed out routes or the deep dig routes. He can kind of bend and work through those. He's got some real agility, which helps him off the press. Some of just that looseness to his game overall. Now, the vertical push speed is a problem because I don't think he threatens guys. So I don't think he could get cornerbacks on their heels so I can snap off this route and back to the ball. That was a problem. But at the catch point is where he became the problem, is because he's a leaper, man. This guy could absolutely jump out of the gym. It felt like the timing, the positioning. This guy was a back shoulder fade target. And the Lions have had success with that, but they've also, that's been a John Morton specialty, is guys that can do that, right? There's a looseness at the catch point as well. The ability to track passes over his shoulders as well. For me, the way that he would kind of just attack defenders aggressively, the way that he would attack the ball in the air, the power, the consistency over his shoulder, Jackson Meeks felt like kind of a go up and get piece that didn't have enough vertical speed, so he may be limited as an actual vertical pusher, but he had enough looseness where it's like, okay, can we tap into more of his game to try to open him up and help him find a little bit more success? Because he had a nice little condensed release package, which could really speed up short area foot quickness, get him off the ball, boom, 2 foot, boom, I'm sudden. And he would get an edge constantly get an edge on guys because he could really kind of speed up some of that footwork. Could also get knocked off his routes as well, due to some of the power off the ball a little bit consistently as well. And if cornerbacks were balanced, they kind of just sat on his routes, right? Guys that were a little more urgent, a little more hyper off the line, he would open those guys up. But really balanced corners, he wouldn't find that kind of success. And again, he didn't lack some of that juice upfield to really concern guys. So I felt that certain corners he had some success against, and he could, but he might have to be a little more of a move piece at the next level than just settling it outside, especially if guys are going to get up and press him. But we signed another receiver as well, and this is Jacoby Keeney James. This is a receiver out of UMass, and Jacoby Keeney James is utilized a ton as kind of one of those like fast motion receivers, which Khalif Raymond, Jamison Williams, a lot of our receivers have had to kind of tap into, is that ability to be utilized as a fast motion piece. You can kind of get him on the move, you can get him out wide, you can work him from different spots. My thing was up and down hands was the big thing that kind of stuck to me. It was like, okay, how confident am I going to be in his hands? But he's over 6 foot, 195 pounds, played against some really good competition, even though he's at UMass. He actually had a ridiculous touchdown against Georgia this past year, went for like 70 yards, made it a 10-point game at the time. They lost by like 100, but it was good for a little while. They were competing for a little while. To me, he did show some strong hands. Specifically, I just felt like he was a little bit tight, like his body control. What was the looseness there? Can he go save balls off the ground? Like I didn't know about that. Some of the underhand technique, he felt like maybe he was rushing a little bit, but his hands also felt a little bit smaller when I watched him, even though I didn't have the measurements there either. And to me, there was just some hit and miss of like where he's actually catching the football from a technique perspective. But you felt strong hands when the ball was thrown to him. And after the catch, he could do a little bit of work as well, right? There was some body control. He can kind of stop, start. He could work through contact a little bit. He was pretty stout in the lower body. He would work on his toes. He was a pretty fluid mover specifically. And then you get him off the line, and he's got some foot speed. He's got some body control that he can also tap into as well. He played with some leverage. The play speed off the line is something that can work. And he also utilized his hands pretty well. He connected those things pretty well. My thing as a route runner is it was pretty up and down. Like pre-sync, you'd feel like he was just rising and it feel like you give him a tell, but he would work some level 1 routes, and he had a lot of success at kind of creating early space in those spots. Just like, hey, we just need to catch the football. I felt like he had a toughness, but the technique just needs consistency, because that's the area where you're probably going to have to eat a little bit at the next level. But there was an aggressive vertical push. It could create double move opportunities, stop start opportunities. I didn't like how he would kind of fade out of his route breaks. Again, maybe some of the lack of sync and just kind of bending through those routes, but his discipline, integrity did show when he's working vertically. He'd pump his arms, he'd drop his head, and you can kind of feel like, all right, he's selling this pretty aggressively here as well. And then he'd kind of find zone windows pretty well, and he kind of worked crossers. He felt like he worked off everybody well. There felt like a football intelligence to his game, kind of a nice pacing, like, all right, here's my window, I'm going to get myself open. Like, there's a really nice feel, not a lot of false movement to his game. So again, want to see the hands be more consistent, but used all over the place. Has a lot of the signs of a smart receiver, and you know those guys typically work at the next level, and they also work for the Lions. All right, let's continue through, because I know we missed at least one player here, and let's go to Ian Kennelly, the safety out of Grand Valley State. Now, the smaller school, of course, and this is a weird one because I haven't seen as much on Ian, so just bear with me here, but just over 6'1", basically 200 pounds. The guy looks like a linebacker when you watch him. Now, he's probably not going to be a linebacker at the next level, but I say that and you think special teams. Like, wait a minute. That guy might be a special teams player. A strong safety for that defense that was physically imposing. I mean, you felt his presence. You could put him in the box. He wouldn't look out of place, especially against that competition. He worked a lot in the box. He worked a lot over the slot from the games that I had watched. He was pretty quick to kind of step himself down, scrape. He really had a really good backside scrape speed, which makes sense considering that he is a safety, but he played with the toughness, right? He'd be the outside force player to get things back inside. He had some acceleration and some juice, kind of that short area burst to his game. Just a long speed I just didn't feel was outstanding, which could limit some of his range, which could be a problem for a safety as well. Maybe they do try to transition his piece. I mean, remember, we brought in Deron Gilbert last year, and he was kind of a tweener, and he stuck around at least for this next season. So I got some vibes of that, just kind of in a different piece. Like, this is a very well filled out, powerful type of player that is just going to run guys over. Like, he's a pretty gritty piece in that sense when you watch him. Man coverage is intriguing. I would like to see him more on tight ends. I think that could be where you find something with his length and his size and the way that he kind of has a field like, oh, I'm going to work around traffic here. And there's some good transition quickness, which feels like it's going to be no problem for tight ends, but he would just give space to slot. So I wonder if you put him on tight ends more consistently, he could have more success, which again could lead him to a potential kind of like tweener role, third safety, kind of a linebacker, like an undersized linebacker type of piece. And he would kind of work as like that robber in zone coverage, which again could be that kind of piece a little bit as well. It's just to me that his breakdown was pretty heavy. It didn't feel like a DB. Felt very heavy when he was breaking out. He played broken down into the box to settle in and tackle. He just felt pretty heavy when he was kind of working those short spaces. Didn't feel like he had a ton of bend, and he needed to really settle his feet to add more consistency as a tackler. But man, he is physically very noticeable immediately when you start watching him. So with that being said, I think we just hit on every UDFA signing that's officially kind of official at this point. And I think we timed that out incredibly well here. So this is just your first look of these players. We'll, of course, be back to do individual breakdowns of these players. That is the plan. And we'll also have to start to look at some of these trial pieces, as that is going to get under the way pretty darn quickly here. But with that being said, I appreciate you all joining. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy your Wednesday, and I'm out.